So it is 7:03. And I'm gonna open the 7:04 actually. Open the September 12th meeting of the Affordable Housing Committee. We'll start as always with public comment. Approve minutes from the August meeting. Review volume 2 of the town plan. Hey Wayne.
Hey. Wow. In person the second time in a row.
Procedures for reviewing and responding to DRB applicants. Talk a little bit about how to be a YIMBY and the farmers market, and then wrap up with the usual liaison updates, other business, agenda stuff. So before we get started, welcome.
Thank you. Let me say, I'm Stuart Alexander. Let me say I'm at the wrong meeting.
Oh, okay.
I couldn't find the agenda online, and I thought the entire planning commission was meeting tonight.
No, you got stuck with the Affordable Housing Committee tonight.
Next Tuesday.
This is Tuesday.
Yeah. Next,
yeah.
And if you're really interested, I believe we're meeting on the Tuesday after that as well. So
I'm sorry?
2 Tuesdays in a row we'll be meeting. Planning Commission is this Tuesday coming up.
Yeah.
And the Tuesday after that.
Oh, all right.
For a special
meeting.
Well, Stuart is an esteemed planning commission emeritus.
I know.
I can't hear you, Chuck.
I can hear everything. I have some loaner hearing aids. That's why I'm shouting. I have my hearing aids are on the fritz. I went to the hearing aid guy and I got some loaners. I can hear a piece of sand that like I just wouldn't believe it. I'm shouting.
All right, we got a few more folks. So before we get going, hi Frederica, can you hear us? We just started.
Yes, I can. I'm sorry. I just got home, so it was either getting there late or just resigning myself to being here.
No problem. I just came from the airport, so I'm with you. Dave, can you hear us? We are at public comment, Dave. If you've got anything you'd like to share, now's your chance. Take that as a no, and Dave, you're always welcome to join us throughout. Next agenda item is approving the minutes from the August meeting. Do I have a motion to approve?
Okay. I motion to approve.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
I will, but is that a conflict of interest?
No. Are you a planning commission? Are you a committee member?
Yeah.
Then I think you're allowed to do that.
Any edits, comments, things we should review before? All right. All those in favor of approving the minutes from the August meeting, say aye.
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 Thank you. Any nays? Any abstain?
Abstain.
Thank you, Stacy. Okay. Town plan volume 2. Before we launch into this, Eric, do you want to give us an update on where town plan is with planning commission?
I won't say it's stalled, but the last meeting was spent just dealing with volume 1 and particularly the first 2 chapters of volume 1. So the introductory chapter, the purpose, and it's on the vision statement and that area. So we did not really get into much of anything about affordable housing at this stage. So that's why we have an extra meeting, because it's going to require more time.
And my understanding is that the planning commission is working on edits of their own in parallel with the process that's going forward, so that you all have a chance to really kind of make it your own and make the edits that you'd like to see. David got it started, and you guys have
Susan, Wendy, and I have gone through volumes 1 and 2 and put comments in there of where there were things we thought needed clarification, were extraneous, shouldn't be in there, or some grammar and issues with that. So that's also on the books. Linda should be working through some of those comments and changes. However, none of those will be permanent until after we get all of the public comment on the volumes that you have, that we have, that we're working on here.
Okay. And I wanted to say that just because we are focusing on volume 2. Yep. Even at first, I think when I saw the second draft of volume 1, I was surprised at how few of our comments and feedback were incorporated. And so initially I was thinking that maybe we would need to do another kind of round of edits of volume 1 as well. And then I found out that the planning commission is putting in a lot of those comments and edits. So we don't need to kind of rework that. But we do really need to focus on volume 2, which is where we're at.
There will be an opportunity to put in additional comments on volume 1 after that is fully revised with the current process. So no, it's not you had one shot and now it's over. There'll be another shot.
Okay.
So did you guys take over the writing from the consultant now?
Not yet. We're giving him all of our edits, but I believe the amount of time that David has left to put into this is probably not sufficient to put in all the corrections. It's a lot to do. Yeah.
So I made copies of your comments, Frederica's comments, and my comments all in one thing.
Cool.
That'd be helpful.
It's super helpful.
I then stapled it in the wrong corner.
I can't
so
share my screen.
You're gonna have to figure that part out on your own.
I don't know. I'm left-handed. This is the right corner as far as I'm concerned.
Keep going, see what happens.
Still good. Still good. No, I'm good.
Yeah, right.
Thank you.
Out, I like missed that last bit on it.
All right.
You provided comments exactly the way they wanted them.
Yeah.
It was really hard.
It was
to
incredible.
Follow your work, because I was like, had to go like this, and there wasn't. I had to read that and then read this and try to produce like a whole sentence in my mind, and I found that very hard.
I agree.
So I think I'd prefer to give them something a little more in a narrative way.
Well, I'll defer to Eric, as you're the one who's actively doing this. That's not the format that they want. And I don't know that we could certainly provide both.
Yeah. You can't provide a whole, doing it this way, you can't provide a whole thought.
Mm-hmm. I want to give them what they asked for, exactly as they asked for it, but I agree, as I was trying to do it, you know, I took my notes all over the document itself, and then tried to transfer it into the format that they wanted. So I think for us, the whole of, you know, housing kind of exists throughout the entire draft. But the biggest sections, I think, are obviously land use, housing, and then again sprinkled throughout. Any kind of big overarching comments or concerns before we jump in? I've seen some, Frederica, you don't have to go, you can just jump in. There's been a lot of discussion within the planning commission about the 80% in 80% of new development focused on village centers. And what I'm sensing from observing those conversations is that there's a tension between the realities that I think we've all identified about what is possible with infill, which are actually articulated pretty clearly in volume 2, and then immediately followed by, but we're going to do it anyway, which makes no sense. But the tension between that and the directive coming down from the CCRPC, which is the Regional Planning Commission. My understanding, and again, Eric, please jump in because you're really the expert here, is that the CCRPC is currently reviewing our town plan and making sure that it ticks all of their boxes. And one of their biggest concerns is any place where we deviate from the 80%. And we start to really talk about broadening development out beyond that. And that isn't consistent with the Regional Planning Commission's goals. At the same time, my understanding is also that the Regional Planning Commission and of Chittenden County, but also the state more broadly, is actively discussing this because, again, the realities of many of the small towns and rural towns in Vermont just aren't able to support that vision and meet the housing needs. And so there is a tension that that I think that the Planning Commission and the ones executing the plan, and then the select board, the ones adopting the plan, are really going to have to wrestle with in terms of how to satisfy the checklist that the Regional Planning Commission gives out in terms of sticking to the broader goals, but also acknowledging the challenges. Does that reflect the conversations you're hearing? And I heard Catherine talking about it too, as chair of the Regional Planning Commission. This is something they're actively discussing.
Yeah, I think that brilliantly describes it. The comedy in the whole thing is that we decide we're an island when it's convenient to us, and we decide we're a member of the county when it's convenient to us. The 80% figures for the county. Mm-hmm. That county includes Winooski, Burlington, Essex Junction, a whole lot of South Burlington. You then can't see, in Winooski, 100% of the housing is going to be in the village center. In Burlington, I don't know of any housing that's being built in a rural area of Burlington or in a rural area of Essex Junction. So, then in Heinsberg, it's, they've done a better job than we have. So they are building quite a bit in the village center, but this is a county figure.
It is a county
Jericho figure,
but it is the Regional Planning Commission has to sign off and say that we meet their things, and this is something that they have flagged that we are not in.
That's a statutory requirement.
Yes,
but the thing is that all these towns have municipal water and wastewater, and Heinsberg said you can build in the town center and get density, but you have to hook to our pipes. Richmond says the same thing.
Yeah. And
so for the county commission to say you guys have to build at the pace these guys are.
Well, they're not saying that we have to build at the pace that they are. They're saying that 80% of our new builds have to happen in these locations, which that will hinder more development than it will spur on, and we don't have the resources or the infrastructure to support that. And so what I'm saying is this isn't a problem that we can solve. It is an inherent failure in logic. I mean, there is no solving the problem, but it is something that we, I think, need to keep advocating and making this. I suggest that we need to keep advocating and making the same arguments that we've been making, make those solid arguments so that we can hand those arguments to our planning commission, our select board, folks who are then going to have conversations with the CCRPC and push back on their criticism or critique of the town plan. And
just from my understanding, can I just a question? Can you hear me?
Yep.
Question. What are those comments you speak about? Are they visible anywhere? Did the Regional Planning Commission actually comment on the draft of the town plan? Because I don't know where in there it says anything that would be actually discordant to their to that 80% thing. You know, they're not, the town plan from what I'm seeing is focusing pretty much exclusively on development in the village centers.
Which is a problem. That's what we're trying to do.
But
has there been public comment from the Regional Planning Commission?
It is not yet public comment. My understanding is that they are in the midst of putting together their formal comments and directly communicated with, I don't know if it was Susan or Linda or both, that this was a concern that they were having. And I, like you, Frederica, was really surprised by that because it seems very, very lightly suggested in the document. And there is over and over and over again, the 80% figure that I think we all have kind of highlighted and marked as something that's concerning and confusing. And so I was surprised even at this, what I would say.
In the meantime, we're permitting dense concentrations of housing for wealthy people anywhere.
Gentle.
Where's that?
Huh?
It's something that they are.
With TUD, you get 100 acres. You can put 10 houses with 40 bedrooms in a 10 acre area, but you can't, you can't build affordable housing in a 10 acre area without adding 90 acres to it.
And so the other piece of your question is that, no, my understanding is and maybe you probably actually have a better, that feedback from the Regional Planning Commission is not something that we have access to yet or has even been delivered yet. Is that right?
I have not seen it. I have not seen any of those such comments. I believe we are getting that on Tuesday next week. It's worth noting that CCRPC has Jericho identified as a predominantly bedroom community. So anything in our plan that makes us less than a bedroom community is almost certainly going to go against parts of their plan. Their plan is predicated on a dense urban core, Burlington, surrounded by increasingly less dense areas encircled around Burlington until you get to the rural parts of the state. Whether that's right, whether we agree with it or disagree with it, is a separate matter. These people.
So I think
each town appoints their own representatives on the CCRPC.
Exactly. So Catherine needs to be raising some help.
So can I make a suggestion? It's difficult to say anything about what their comments are before having seen the comments. And, as a housing committee, all I can imagine is that if that's what the case is, maybe they don't want any growth at all in Jericho. Then if they want to focus it more on the urban centers, and maybe they think our housing resolution is too aggressive. Maybe that's what they're concerned about, because that's the only thing in the town plan that I can imagine that would be discordant with what you just said. I just think that, as a affordable housing committee, our job is, as you said, is just to keep, to promote affordable housing in Jericho. And I think that the town as a whole has really identified that as a critical issue. So it probably doesn't even make sense to talk about this until we really know what their objections are.
And it's not really our problem. I mean, it is our problem in that I think that we need to understand where the pressure is coming from and what the pressure is, and we need to help make the argument and keep making the argument that we're making. But as you said, Frederica, we don't have a lot of information, and I will say that the CCRPC saw our housing target resolution, gave us edits and feedback before we passed it. So there is these competing needs. That is something that they're going to have to work out. And so I think moving forward, as for tonight's discussion, I want you all to be aware of that, and that's conversation and pushback that is happening. But for us, for tonight, I think that we keep making the suggestions that we've been making all along.
Could I make a suggestion that I think our recommendations to the planning commission and the select board need to be presented to the select board, because the point of pressure that we have is through the select board with the regional planning commission. And our select board needs to be advocating for a different vision.
I agree with what you're saying, Chuck, but I will refer back to my favorite old Vermont adage. It's hard to say, not knowing what's actually in there, what we should be doing. So let's find out what they're doing, and then we'll say something.
Either way, we have not yet made our presentation to the select board. We are a creature of the select board. We're advising the planning commission, we're advising the select board. We have not engaged with the select board. And I feel like this is one of the number of reasons why we need to.
I have presented to the select board a number of times, and we can absolutely present again, but to suggest that we haven't gone in front of them and made these arguments.
But the document that we gave the planning commission were our recommendations after months of careful study and editing. We haven't presented those, have we? No,
we've submitted them to them.
Right.
Okay, so all of that said, Frederica, and I apologize to folks if I don't know whose suggestion got shared with the whole group. Frederica, your recommendations, a lot of them overlapped, which was good, or was either a better suggestion, or took the time to make the argument instead of just providing the edit that the planning commission asked for. So I think that that's helpful. There were a couple, your first two comments, I think one is prior inhabitants acknowledging that there were other inhabitants, that essentially that history didn't start with white settlement, as well as your comment about prehistoric on page 4. Those are both things that the DEI committee has included in their feedback. But I think it's totally appropriate to send that feedback twice to underscore the message. So I just wanted you to know that's been flagged by others as well.
That's good, because I remember Susan saying, we're not going to start with the Browns family again. And here we are starting with the Browns family again. It sounded a little like that was kind of copy and pasted from the old town plan, that section.
I mean, almost all of volume 2 is copy and pasted from the old town plan and hasn't been touched except to update data. So that is, it reads that way because I think that's what's
so. Oh, that's amazing. I didn't realize that was actually true. I was kind of just offhand comment, but that's actually the case. Yeah.
So I've heard this a couple times. What's the deal with the Browns family now? We have a road named after them.
For many years, town plan history section started off with the Browns being captured by the Indians and taken to Quebec.
They're held for ransom.
I understand.
Yeah.
But that's
they were lucky, because sometimes they were killed.
Sort of like the founding, and then history kind of stops about them. I mean, it was sort of, that was like the founding, the founding. It was.
But why is that a problem to say they were kidnapped and held for ransom? I mean, that happened all over New York.
Yeah, actually, I guess that some would say that the history kind of of this place started before that, and it's kind of just erasure of anything that happened before that.
Well, yeah, but you can say that archaeological studies detail that the area was settled and there were whatever, because down in New York, you go to the Allegheny Plateau, all the Indian towns are still there. With it, people who are 1/8 Indian or so living in them.
A couple thousand years of history. That was
Yeah.
the one thing that was featured in the history.
Okay, well, yeah,
Well,
but you could talk
recommendation
about the
that
glaciers
I-
and you could talk
yeah.
about,
I've already made a recommendation to the planning commission as part of my role that we get rid of all of that stuff. You want to learn about that? Go to a history book. This is a town plan.
okay, yeah.
You know, I don't need to know about the kettles that were formed when the glaciers were here 300,000 years ago. I need to know where I should not build, but the rest of it, go get a geology book. And that's
Maybe
this is the same thing. You know, go get a history book if you want to know who was here in the 1750s or 1610s, or when Samuel Champlain sailed down the river, who was on the other side. That's not really relevant to where we are today and the plan and the task we have today of finding where Jericho is going to go.
The one other thing that I want to call out, because I do think it's directly relevant to housing, is the use of the word character. And the suggestion that any place that word is mentioned, which happens to be 32 times in volume 2, is something that the planning commission really look at and ask themselves what they mean by that word, and use more accurate language.
Can I add to that? Just because I was looking at this today. The traditional as well. Like, I'm not clear on what that means when they're talking about infill and it being traditional to, like, does that mean it's supposed to look old timey? Or, like, what does that mean? I guess is that just coded language, or does it actually have some kind of definition?
It's a good thing to catch both of those.
So it's just from, traditional quote means a roof, right? So if you built a flat roof in Vermont, you tend to have trouble, a lot of maintenance. So I guess what I'm thinking is you drive around here and you see all these little capes, little ranches. And to me, that's a traditional house, whether it's 500 square feet or 5,000 square feet. So when you think of the character, are you talking about that, if they're lower cost houses, they don't look lower cost? I think that's something we need to put in writing, that somebody coming in here can't put a bunch of boxes up, that, they should be built to last for 30, 40, 50 years and not look low cost and be built low cost.
Well, and I think that's kind of the point, is that the words character and traditional are meaningless.
To me, it means the houses I see around here that have been here for 100 years because they were built well and they last that long.
Say a pointy roof, if that's what you mean, or say whatever it is that you mean, and I would push back that I don't know that matters and should be in
it does
plan.
It does. Snow load, no load. What you should do is say
difference between like the function of it, which is what you're suggesting with the roof, versus what it looks like, and the subjective nature of oh, that looks low income, and I don't know if we want to.
But I think if you just say that architecturally designed to conform to the requirements of a northeastern winter and summer, because that's how these houses were developed.
Yeah, and I think that has much more meaning than the word character or tradition.
And that does still allow for a sloping flat roof. Doesn't have to be a pointed roof to get there.
Right, but I mean, it just when you think of some of the people building
designing people's houses.
Well, if I come and buy a house, my assumption is it's not going to fall down on my head, or I'm not going to have it full of mold and stuff. So, right, but I mean, there should be some requirement that somebody's in good faith going to build a house that's in keeping with the requirements of our environment.
Why are you gonna tell them what to do in the town plan in terms of whether their roof is flat or not? Isn't that something for their engineer to decide? I mean, for example, there's a house with a flat roof on Shillhammer Road that's surviving the winters just fine.
How long has it been there?
No, the new one.
Yeah, a new one. It's a new house. What I'm talking about,
just to, if I may, just to maybe we to put an end to the idea of flat roof or not. Character-based zoning in the Riverside prohibits flat roofs. And the result of that is we heard from the Wisdom House people coming in here how they wanted to have a rooftop garden and patio, and it was not going to be allowed because of that restriction. We also have heard from others that the flat roof is desirable once you get over 3 stories, because a peaked roof on a 3 or 4 story roof building will have a huge roof that's empty space. So
Right.
I believe
Manufactured homes have flat roofs.
Yeah.
If I
Well,
bring-
little,
if I were
yeah.
bringing a manufactured home that has 10 years life left, and that's all I can afford, and I have a lot, and I meet all the standards, I would be able to do that. And why should we decide that someone in that situation is better off homeless than in solving a problem the best way they can? And if I want to build a tree house, and if I need, all the various safety codes and all that, I mean, that ought to be okay.
But I guess what I'm getting at with character-based is that my impression on the Planning Commission, I'm not speaking for them, is that we are going to move away from defining what is an appropriate looking building in the town of Jericho. And I feel that we as affordable housing shouldn't be saying this is what an appropriate looking house is in Jericho.
Yeah, my concern is just that people are going to try to cut corners, and it'll be a lower quality house that looks
So
like it's low cost.
I think that
That's my concern.
is, if the plan, and again, this is, I think, further down the whatever in the town plan. If the regulations want to provide bonuses and benefits if you are in exchange for affordable housing, then at that point, yeah, you want to make sure that the developers aren't, cutting corners and cheaping out in order to get these extra bonuses to make a bunch of money. And that situation, I think, calls for the kinds of
Right, because that's enrichment zoning, where they talk about getting density bonuses and lower cost houses. It's very specific, same materials.
That doesn't need to be just a blanket statement that all the houses in Jericho need to be X.
Why would you rule out container houses? Why would you rule out underground houses?
Exactly.
Why would you rule out all these potential areas for innovation?
Okay, I want us to be productive and kind of get through this. I also am not quite sure how to best do that. So Chuck, I'm really thankful that you printed these things out so that we have them to reference, especially because I can't share my screen right now. So I'd like to start in land use, if I may. Unless there are other kind of big overarching things like character and traditional that anybody wants to point out and the history. All right, so let's start with Jericho's land use. I
have one more general comment, but I can do it later too.
Oh, no, please. I don't have any kind of plan tonight. I apologize. Go ahead.
So, generally, in order to kind of get closer to fulfilling the housing resolution, I was surprised that I didn't find anything about there were, again, I don't want to harp on the same thing. There were acknowledgments about the limits of building just in the village centers, and I'm concerned that I don't care where we make our affordable housing as long as it happens, and I'm concerned it won't all happen in the village centers. And there was acknowledgement of that in there, but one of the things that was missing was any kind of planning for how to create affordable housing elsewhere outside of the village centers without inviting developers to come in and just contribute to expensive sprawl. So, for example, acknowledgement that PUDs the rules for PUDs might have to be revised to allow for, or to incentivize affordable housing within a PUD. So if we are successful in trying to suggest that there might be something built outside of the village centers, then I think a section about that should be in the town plan about PUDs.
You didn't see that? Is that what you were saying? Chuck,
No, I didn't really see that. Maybe I missed it.
oh, you didn't see.
I
Okay.
think
I don't think I saw it.
I think that it is a volume 1, but I certainly agree that it can be well, it's lightly mentioned in here. So I'm looking at in the land use section, page 11. In a number of locations, Jericho's PUD requirements have been successful at concentrating new residential development in order to conserve working farmland and forested blocks. That might be a good place to insert a sentence that says just that those could also be utilized for
To that point, I would encourage that we put in that sentence that as an additional incentive for PUDs that they get a density bonus, and I think that's already in. PUDs already get a density bonus, but that it now be conditioned upon putting in housing that is priced at below median housing prices. Without telling what it has to be, to say it has to be lower price than anything else.
Or small.
I don't care whether it's bigger or smaller, just to be priced less.
Yeah, we need, and to get it done, it's going to have PUDs where you can build 20 houses on 10 acres. I mean, you shouldn't have to have 200 acres.
That's the point of the PUD. I mean,
right.
Tyler Circle is a case of Tyler Place, rather, is an example of a PUD surrounded by farmland.
And the houses have to be $500,000 in order to make it work. So what we need is a way to build. The town recently approved 40 bedrooms on over 13 acres outside of the center. So that's possible. But the problem is all the extra land that they have to buy in order to do that. So we need a PUD where you can add and buy your lot for every additional house that's under 900 square feet or whatever. You don't have to buy more land. And
that would be the density bonus that would come from
it. Right, you wouldn't have to buy any more land to add houses.
Because you'd be increasing.
Yeah, basically like a density bonus on steroids kind of thing.
Yeah.
So are they required to buy the land, or did the piece of land come that way?
No, if you've got 25 acres,
yeah,
and 7 of them are developable, and you can put on 7 houses on those, or you could put on 10. But in order to put on 10, 3 of them have to be below median pricing.
Okay,
that's the way the density bonus would work.
No, well, okay, that's one way.
That's one way to work.
Somebody who can buy 10 acres and build 20 houses on it, not have to buy additional land. Because we've shown sort of environmentally, water and sewer, we know it's possible to do that. It's just got approved on Plains Road. So when Ricky's saying on steroids, exactly. You can add as many houses as you can fit in terms of appropriate water and sewer and permit if they meet some criteria without having to buy additional land. You have to buy additional land, then you have to build big houses. That's why Tyler House was like a failure with respect to
that's my question. If you can help me. So did they want to buy this land and somebody said if you want to build those houses you have to buy this other chunk of land, or was it this is the land that's for sale, this stuff's not buildable, this is what we can? I'm trying to.
It was neither of the above. It was this much land is for sale. We want to build 20 houses. Yeah. You can't take this land and turn it into 20 lots. You can put your 20 houses down here and the rest is going to be conserved.
Oh, okay.
So right now, if you buy 100 acres in a 10-acre zone, you can build 10 houses.
Mhm.
Even if 90 acres of it is unbuildable.
Mhm.
And if you concentrate them, you get additional density bonuses, even if you're building houses for really expensive houses. If you put a solar panel on top, or but it insulate the houses, you get density bonuses.
So in essence, I think the town plan isn't going to go into that level of detail, but the town plan should include like a statement or a section to the effect of that the town is planning to, encourage or incentivize affordable housing in PUDs by means such as additional density bonuses or something similar.
Yeah, we need to
And
establish
that statement is just the statement is kind of lacking for a reason, because it's still, the town plan still has this focus on, let's really focus on the village centers, which is understandable, but probably not sufficient.
Mm-hmm. No, that's good. The other thing, Frederico, you asked about missing middle and middle income housing, and we were careful to use both, which is what the state used. So missing middle, I think David describes in here as first time home buyers, kind of last home buyers. The state uses that definition and or housing that's affordable to the 80% to 120% median income. And so in our housing resolution, we used that language that covered both the kind of housing type and the middle income.
But did you see the section I was referring to? I mean, it's pretty much at the very end of the housing section. There's a whole paragraph about what missing middle housing means. And the way it's described is it means a certain type of architecturally different housing. So it's like, it's not a small house, it's not a big multi-apartment, but it's something in between. And that's what's called the missing middle in the town plan. It was something I had never really heard of. It was very interesting, but it seemed different from what we've discussed. So I'm trying to...
Pleasant Street next in Essex Junction.
And different from the way that the state is defining it in their program to produce it. So it was a good thing to call out.
Yeah, I was just wondering, do we really want to have that in there, or is that really our definition, or should we make it clear what we actually mean by missing middle? And you know which section I'm referring to? I'm like scrolling like crazy through the town plan.
It's page 12.
It's where they have that graphic that shows the houses.
Right. Yeah.
And missing middle looks more like, 2-bedroom, two-floor condos, which is
but it
nice,
was like it was defined by size of the building, that it's kind of a middle-sized building rather than by what I thought missing middle meant. So I was just surprised by that, I guess.
Yeah. Okay. All right, so let's go back to land use.
Land use. Scroll.
I know, it's the overall document, page 34.
I got it.
Is this Chuck's part?
We all kind of have.
This is everybody's. So land use section.
The spreadsheet.
Well, you can, there's land use section there too.
Right over here? Well, you know what? There's a print.
No, I think that's mostly SJ's work. to answer your question. The spreadsheet.
Should be right up there at
Yeah.
the front step. There might be two of them.
Yeah.
This nostalgic history of Jericho settlement is just not correct.
Well, I think we've addressed that already, as saying we disagree with it. We should just, Jericho was settled at this point by white people. Other people were here before, and move on.
Because it was settled with,
It really
it implies
printed really kind of.
It's got thud factor.
this implication.
This is just volume 1.
This implication that the preponderance of people lived in the village centers as in the 19th century is simply incorrect. And it's you know, it's an argument that's used over and over again, but somehow, you know, people shouldn't be living in rural Jericho. And the truth is, in the land, the settlement patterns in northern Vermont are nothing like they were in southern. This is where the planners come from. You know, the way the land grants, the land was distributed evenly around the whole town. People lived all over Jericho, and there were a few businesses in the village centers. And this whole historical, I mean, I'm happy taking it all out, or get it correct.
Well, Chuck, I'm sorry I was just so late, but I sent you some comments that I tried to do a few months ago about that. And the thing is that villages were settled with larger pieces of land, but all close together. But the problem was everybody had a well, an outhouse, and a barn. And that's what limited how close they could get. But when you went out in the country and you had, 300, 400 acres, it didn't matter where your well or your outhouse was. You could always make sure that none of the two never mixed. And so, I was told when I came up here, I used to be on the president of the Historical Society, and some guy came, he claimed that Nebraska Notch was named that in the early 1800s because people weren't moving out west. They were fleeing the east because of cholera and dysentery from polluted water sources in the villages. But nowadays, we don't have outhouses. We have septic systems. So that helps to a degree. But that was the basic idea, was it was far more spread out in the country because people had to be apart.
Right. So I think we're agreeing
that
the history that repeatedly this nostalgic narrative about dense village centers with few sparsely settlement on the outside.
That's how it was. That's how it was.
15 schools in Jericho. They were all over Jericho.
Right, I know, but that's how it was. The farms were all spread far apart because they were on a lot of land. And in the village, you were able to cut your land and make it smaller. But the problem was you got to the point where everybody's well was mixing with everyone's outhouse.
Look at the map. 1840, 1850 of Jericho. It's a dot where everybody lived. And you can see that there was little clusters of dots all over Jericho. They weren't spread out on 300-acre farms. It was 1800.
Where is that? I'd like to see that.
It's online, probably.
You can look it up. Is it in the town or something? Or there
was 20 houses in Jericho Center when the population of Jericho was 1,800 people.
I mean, to the point that you're making, yes, it's very easy. I'll just walk through any of the woods in Jericho and you see stone walls everywhere. People were living everywhere. There were indeed houses. There was a concentration of houses in three areas: here, the center, and the riverside. A concentration, not a majority, just more houses here, denser than anywhere else. That part is still true.
Yes, there was also a cluster of houses in Nashville. There was a place called South Jericho. There was a place called Winooski Valley. I mean, these were like real places.
Yeah.
And there were clusters of houses all over Jericho.
These three were the biggest, which is why they're still here. And the other ones have faded away.
No,
nonetheless,
away.
Well, they faded away before they were zoned away. Nonetheless, it's in terms of what we're here to talk about, which is how this affects affordable housing. I'm not sure what that particular descriptor adds or detracts from
repeatedly as a justification for restricting people from living in the rural areas. And it comes back to like tradition.
But that same statement is also true of the natural resources, protecting our wildlife corridors, protecting the sensitive lands. That's also
But
used.
that's real stuff. Okay, this is fake. It's not true.
Oh,
But if I'm 90 years old, I want to live near the village, not out in the mountains. I mean, if we want to build senior housing or housing for people, I mean, we're all hale and hearty people. But I mean, if you're talking about bringing older people, I think they'd want to be closer to the villages. I'd like the road to be.
Not the villages.
Okay.
Okay. What I'm against are these fake arguments for justifying restricting people who would like to live in rural areas. And this is another fake argument. We can move on.
All right, the
Green list is another fake argument.
the bedroom community line, I think hit a bunch of us in different ways, but we all reacted to it. And Eric, you were talking earlier about Jericho being intentionally a bedroom community.
yes, in the regional plan, in the county regional plan, Jericho is not supposed to be Williston or Winooski or Essex.
I don't think we're challenging this bedroom. We just want more bedrooms.
Yeah.
And I think what I reacted to, and I think what you reacted to, is the grown involved into.
We did it first.
Okay, do you want to talk about the grand list for a second?
Yeah, I mean, his argument is not one year, but the dense development. He's saying that dense development in the village centers is the best way to improve the grand list situation. And I agree, it's a good way. I don't think we have a grand list problem, but it introduces another way to come up with an argument for why people need to be limited in terms of where they live. If you look at a dense development somewhere else in Jericho, I don't think it really adds much more in the way of costs. What they're saying is that it's cheaper to add a dense development in a village center where it's not particularly possible. It's cheaper for the town to add one there than to add one somewhere else. And I don't think that's true. I mean, in kind of the grand scheme, maybe in a totally unsettled area that may be true. But if you look at the cost, we already have the roads, we already have the bus routes, we're already running the utility lines. Every new place would have its own water and sewer. I don't see how it's a grand list. And personally, I'd like to see them in both places. But what he's saying is we want to restrict it in a bunch of areas and put it in the village center because it's a little cheaper for the town. And I don't see. I'm in favor of doing both. I also think that the grand list argument is pretty much not. I don't think we should use the grand list argument to restrict where people live, and that's what he's doing.
So who is this? Is it
The writer.
What's his last name?
White.
David.
But it's evolving as there's been 7 or 8 reasons, some of them contrived on why we should restrict where people live. And this is emerging as the next one.
Well, I don't completely agree with your statement, Chuck, because his last paragraph states, if the tax base continues to grow at a sub-inflation rate, which is otherwise projected, it will be increasingly difficult to fund existing municipal services, let alone expand or improve them without either increases in the tax rate or growth in the tax base. With many property owners concerned about further tax increases, this is where understanding and priorities around where the best places are to encourage new growth and development and what types of land uses offer the greatest value. The answer in both cases is to encourage more compact mixed-use development in or near village centers where they can be more efficiently supported by municipal services. That does not exclude putting it somewhere else. But it says if we've already got municipal services here, we don't have to invest more money in doing it by trying to build here. Versus telling it, and this again is in line with the affordable housing, telling a developer, go out there on the backside of Morgan Road and put up 50 houses. By the way, you're going to have to pay for your own water, your own sewer, and getting power there. So your lot prices are going to go up. Whereas if you could take something here around the village center and put up 50 houses, we got water, we got roads, we got sewer, we got power. That's a lot of investment that doesn't have to be made by the developer, which means lower priced housing, which is one of our top goals.
I
think that's totally that's
but he's using this as a way to restrict where people live.
It's I think that, you know, that kind of paragraph, that paragraph really struck me as well. And it struck me because the conclusion wasn't really strictly following what he had been saying before. And then it was quickly relativized in the next paragraphs he went through every single scenario of village center, commercial, more village center. He actually went through each village center one after the other. And in each one basically concluded, but we can't really do it. But we can't really do it. But we can't really do it. And so this first one is clearly a vision that is then relativized by reality. And that's kind of a concern I have, that the town plan is a vision relativized by reality, and that makes our mission as an affordable housing committee endangers us being able to reach our housing targets. For example, what municipal services are we talking about? You know, there are no such municipal services at present. So he's talking about the future here. And in the meantime, that future is a ways away if you're talking about all village centers. So again, it's a vision that's not backed up by current reality. And the vision of a town plan is a longer term vision, but it's not that long term. So I thought actually that this paragraph, while it seemed to make sense on its surface, was kind of invalidated by what came afterwards.
But our town, if we want to address property taxes, we need to add more kids.
But our town supplies services. They plow the roads and they also provide bus service to schools.
They already do that on every road.
I know, but the thing is, if
not every road,
it's an effect of whether you're driving way far away or whether you're going around a little loop near the village to come back here to the school. It's how much.
So you're talking about school bus. My kids use the school bus every day. And we live right where you live. So those municipal services exist out there. So I think we're talking about fictional municipal services. We're talking about things like sewer and they're
not necessarily fictional. We have a wastewater treatment survey in effect right now, which is going to be presented to the town sometime within the next 2 to 3 months. And that is going to indicate where should we have wastewater treatment, how much should it cost. And the intention is that we will go to the town with that to get bonds to pay for it and to build it. But it's not going to cover the entire town. It's going to cover.
That'll be a game changer. And
yes, and it's going to be in the village center. It's going to be here in Riverside.
Absolutely. I believe that. I believe you. I'm just saying that the timeline for that is not like necessarily within the timeline of this town plan alone. So
unless those municipal services are those costs are kind of minor compared to what people are actually paying their property taxes for. I'm all in favor of adding water and sewer. I'm all in favor of having this dense development of 10 or 25 acres in a village center in a place that is I just don't know where it is. But why wouldn't we want to encourage some development, say at the end of Barber Farm Road? We're already plowing the road. 117 is plowed. The bus service is already going there. The utilities are going. Basically, what this argument is saying is, hey, you know what? You guys are all really subsidizing the estate properties in the rural areas. Basically, that's what he's acknowledging. And why not have more residents using the same services that are being provided by the town. I mean, having houses this spread out, those are very expensive roads. With very little incremental cost.
I'm gonna move us on. I'm gonna move us on.
This is ridiculous. They don't think well, the homes are out or residents.
So I think yes, and that is the way that the data comes down, and this is broken up by the state and by the federal government where this data comes from. And so it's easy enough to request that they combine it into the single family detached. It's a fair point.
Is there a reason why they would separate them?
I think for FHA funding, it's different.
Yeah.
I think it's FHA funding and probably also flood control, flood siting, making sure they're in the right places. There are different loan to value ratios as well for mortgages. So they are called out because it is considered a more risky investment for a bank to give you money against, and that's why the FHA.
Is it because they're not as well built, or
because
they have flat roofs?
Yeah, it's because you can put it on the back of the truck and roll it away and no one will ever find it again.
Oh,
it's because we're just abandoning.
So I think that there are, depending on the point of the paragraph or the point of the graph, it is.
That's on page 2 of the housing section. It's just mobile homes and other types of housing are pulled out as being approximately 3.9% of all housing in Jericho at present.
Oh, all right. So from that point of view, it's of interest then. Okay.
Yeah. It's an estimate. It was 1.3% in 2016.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. You're right.
So if you build a mobile home boat park, is each person own their piece of land, or are they renting a piece of
There's a
land?
number of ways you can do it, but mostly they're either a co-op or owned by an entrepreneur. And they put their pads that are put down that have water and sewer and electric to them. And you bring your home, put it down, and you then pay a monthly rental fee for the pad.
Oh, okay.
And then you pay your the water and sewer, I guess, a variety of ways. The truth is, once the home gets dropped on the pad, they're very rarely moved. And what happens is the parks kind of get old, they tend to get old together. But we don't have one because we made them unlawful. But
we have one down at the end of Governor Peck. There's a big one in there behind the fuel oil place.
That's in Richmond.
Oh, that's Richmond.
That's Richmond.
They're for an example of one that's doing very well. Go to Williston Woods.
That's worth a drive. So you go there on a Saturday afternoon, everybody's out. I mean, walking around.
Oh, I used to whitewater canoe with a guy that lived in there in a trailer. Yeah.
Yeah.
He was an engineer at IBM.
And some people from here have retired there. And so is age restricted?
I think it is 55. Yeah. I'm not sure though.
Williston Woods?
Yeah.
I think so.
I think it is.
Yeah. So right now to build Williston, I don't know, maybe there's 50 houses in there. But most of Jericho, you need 500 acres.
Well, they have really good soil over there. I've been there. I remember now.
I understand that. But
yeah.
And they're on Champlain water.
You ought to be able to.
So I do want to shift our attention to the end of the land use section of the additional topic specific action items.
This is the spreadsheet.
In the volume 2 of the town
Oh, okay.
plan. There's one point that Chuck brings up about the second bullet, which says develop clear zoning district descriptions that includes character of the neighborhood or district definitions and review criteria. And so I think what you're saying there is twofold. One, the description of character of the neighborhood district. What is that? I don't know, that can be thorny depending on what you mean by that. And then the second being, if you're using character as review criteria, first of all, we want to make it so that it's easier to develop without review, that the regulations are clear and predictable, and most things are permitted. And so they don't come under conditional review that would offer opportunities for closing down development or stopping development. And that review criteria shouldn't be, I'm putting what's in your mouth, shouldn't be hinging on some character.
Absolutely. Unless we tell the truth, you say this development was zoned and designed and built for wealthy people. And that's the character, and that's how we're going to keep it. I just want to tell the truth, you know, maybe. But we're also talking about making changes, changing our character is right now, you can build a house up to 60,000 square feet in 99% of Jericho, but it's illegal to build a triplex in 70% of our Jericho. That's our character. And we're talking about changing our character. And the idea that this guy's going to write character descriptions of neighborhoods with the idea that somehow things will be saying the same, and that's going to become review criteria for the DRB on deciding whether a house.
But what is meant? What do you mean by character? Is it what the house looks like, or is it character as far as putting an X-rated video store and a?
Those are all great questions, and it's ambiguous. Right?
Because
let's be clear. The specific action is develop clear zoning descriptions that include what the character is. In other words, define it. Define, if you're going to use character, define it. Otherwise, pull it out.
I mean, why even need it? Why can't it just be develop clear zoning district descriptions? Yeah.
Yep.
Well,
exactly.
There was like 20 years ago or so, there was an video store went into Williston Corners, and a bunch of women came and they said this is not in keeping with the character of a residential community. So I guess they went down to Burlington for a while. I don't know whatever happened to them, but I used to drive to work and stuff, and I'd see actually, it's a big memory. And so
you can have those what ifs.
So no, but I'm just saying it. If character, character to you means what the house looks like, that's one thing. But if character is somebody saying, I don't want an X-rated video shop in my neighborhood, I don't want somebody putting a bar in one end of their house and people are there till 2 a.m. I mean, it's two different things. And I think you're talking about what the house looks like, right? Or am I putting?
Well, the thing is, the term character, as you're just pointing out, is a term that's very ambiguous and can be used either way, and it can also be used by people to exclude lower income housing, for example, if they say, well, this doesn't fit with a character. So I think that it's appropriate to call that out and to think about maybe just keeping the sentence to the first part of it and not include the word. That's why including the word character is problematic all through the document, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And there is a section in the zoning bylaws that defines what becomes a conditional use versus a permitted use. So it's very easy to say that in a residential district, a conditional use is something that is retail or entertainment or something to that effect. Mm-hmm. And that's That's not
Exactly.
housing.
There's a mechanism
That's
for
business.
it. Yeah.
There is a mechanism, but it's not related to, this is a residential district in which every house must be on 1 acre lot with 2-car garage and 3 stories and dormer windows or something. So
greater than 2,000 square feet, like our most recent HOA wanted.
So
Yeah.
that
Retail is illegal in most of Jericho anyway.
that brings me to the
in-home
next section.
in-home retail is allowed.
We
What?
In-home retail is allowed.
Yes.
didn't address in volume
That's
1, and
nice.
maybe we should, which is I don't know what, if anything, we can do about HOAs, but I don't know if we want to advocate for a section, a bullet, an action item, a descriptive paragraph that just addresses the role that HOAs can play in limiting or excluding affordable housing, mixed income neighborhoods, and if that's something that belongs in the town plan.
Oh, I think
it does belong in the town plan, and I think it should be something that specifically HOAs may not exclude housing that is below the average selling price of the development unit. And then housing, and we also need to say HOAs cannot exclude accessory dwelling units either within the building or adjacent to the building on the lot, provided it meets with septic and water requirements. But if you want to build a 500 square foot mini home on your 2 acre lot, the HOA shouldn't be able to stop you from doing that.
Do you feel like this should go in volume 1 as well under
Yes.
one of the action items?
Yes.
Does anyone else feel differently?
no.
I don't. I think that's actually very well summarized. I do. I have tried to dig a little bit and figure out the legalities of this, and I haven't made any progress. So, you know, just trying to find somebody who knows the ins and outs of what the law says here would be great. And I'll keep digging.
Okay, and I just so you know, there's a couple of folks on the planning commission who are really interested in this topic as well.
Yep.
So
It's a metaphor.
You're not alone.
It's a metaphor for the town itself.
Well, the thing about it is the HOA is a legal document drafted by a lawyer, usually from boilerplate, before anybody even moves into the neighborhood.
Yeah.
And the HOA themselves can amend that document anytime they want to by majority vote.
Mhm.
So it would be possible for the DRB to state, if you have an HOA and you want to be approved in this town, you must allow affordable housing and smaller housing. And the HOA can be changed. It's not a concrete document. It's not a constitution. Actually, it is a constitution. You can amend it whenever you want to. 3/5 votes or whatever it is.
I like that. I think a lot of people have no idea what their HOA says.
Yeah.
On this point.
Most people, if they looked at their HOA, would be very upset.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Most
So-
people, you're not allowed to have vegetable gardens in most HOAs.
We're gonna-
Yes, I have.
Yeah, I read Tom Cheney's that he sent me. There's
There's some ridiculous things in there.
But you can't have a vegetable garden?
We're gonna.
So what about all those people that have little chicken coops and chickens in
We're
their
not
yards?
allowed to have chicken.
Oh my God, no, you're not allowed to have a chicken coop. You're not even allowed to have a clothesline half the time.
Yeah,
Yep.
exactly.
I don't
Cars
get
have
a
to be
chicken
parked
coop.
at, cars can't be outside.
I have well, my car's always outside.
Yep.
There's too much junk in my garage.
And unless some neighbor complains about it, it's fine. A neighbor complains about it, then it's
8:15. So I'm gonna move us on
Yep.
to the housing stock section.
Yep.
And just, I'm not hearing anything too. Never mind. All right, housing stocks. Mobile homes, no.
and I just want to come back to the whole infill. and how the planners are really good. This is a drawing we've all seen before of a little neighborhood. You show where all the houses get added. The problem is that there's not a picture of the Jericho neighborhood. I got the mileage for Jericho Village according to the V-Trans, and I'm not entirely sure if their map is the same as our map of the Jericho Village, but there's 9 miles of roads in Jericho Village. 3 of them are Route 15, a little bit of Plains Road, and a little bit of Lee River Road. 6 of the 9 miles are in Sunnyview, Griswold, Snowflake, Lawrence Heights, Lawrence View, Old Pump Road, Mill Street. But most of it is in development. Most of the road frontage is in developments of some are 1/4 of an acre, but most are 1/2 an acre or 2/3 of an acre, and there's a few that are an acre, with very little other land around. So we need evidence of infill happening in neighborhoods similar to the ones we have, like Sunnyview, Griswold, like that. Now we have in our minds, okay, there can be all kinds of infill once we have water and sewer, but there are places that look very much like Jericho developments that were built in the same era in other places in Chittenden County that have water and sewer. Now, when I drive around those neighborhoods, I'm not seeing the kind of infill that we seem to be hoping for in Jericho neighborhood. Drive around Old North End in Burlington. There's a bunch of neighborhoods in South Burlington, like in between the airport and Burlington, that kind of look like the neighborhoods. What I'm talking about. I just don't see, and they all have water and sewer. I don't know what the zoning is, but I assume that they could add, legally they certainly could add an EDU. I just don't see it happening. I mean, there just aren't that many cases where people want to put a new house in the front yard or the backyard. We're stuck with, 3/4 of the houses in Jericho were built after the mid-1960s, and hundreds of those houses were built in the 70s and 80s, just coming off Leave It to Beaver. It was a moment in time about what an ideal kind of development was, and Jericho, went wild. That is what we're working with. And I don't think it would be that hard. If he's so confident that there's going to be infill in these neighborhoods, he needs to give us some examples. And and I think that would be really informative. If we can look at those neighborhoods.
Does he mean infill in those neighborhoods? Like you show the roads, but where are the houses that are
This
existing?
is Griswold. This is Pinehurst.
Mm-hmm.
No, this is Starboard. That's Pinehurst. This is Old Pump, or Sunnyview rather. Old Pump's over here. So this is the area where you're looking at.
Go to Zillow and you kind of zoom. There's a point in the whole zoom back and forth where you can click on each house that's been sold in the last 20 or 30 years, yep, and you can get the lot size. And I've been just sort of poking around Griswold. Okay, I know those are all, these lots are all kind of the same. Pinehurst are just a tad bigger. Sort of once you get up Griswold into like Rose, I think it's Ross, houses a little bigger. There's some 1 acre houses up there. But it's really, if there's going to be infill, it's going to be in neighborhoods like that. There's some road frontage on Route 15 that is not, fully developed, but a lot of the road frontage is on Route 15. From the cafe on Route 15 up to Town Hall to, maybe to Griswold. I can't picture
Packard. All the way to Packard. There's a lot of, not to insult the people who live in it, but there's a lot of dilapidated housing there. And if you think about Place Drive just around the corner here, that's newish. You think about just past that, there's a bunch of triplexes that were put in, all of those within the last 15 years. That's the kind of infill that the town planners are saying, we want that. You've got a house, it's on 2 acres, you've got road frontage, you can build a house behind there, put in a duplex, a triplex, a whatever you want in there. And those have gone in. They have historically gone in within the last 10, 15 years. So that is doable. And if you think of all of the road between here and Packard, and you look at all of those single-story bungalows that were built in the 60s with, to your point, shoddy construction that now have roofs that are more moss than anything else, those are teardowns. Whoever buys those is going to be putting in a lot more units in there. It's going to be like the one that the little condo development just up here on the left side as you're heading towards Underhill. It's off in the corner there, a bunch of five condos down there.
So in your view, there's enough room in that area right there to accommodate the infill that we're talking about.
Some of it, not all of it, but some of it. I mean, we could literally say today, you can build anything you want, anywhere you want in Jericho. As big as you want, have at it.
Which is not something I'm recommending.
I understand that. But even if we said that, it would not make a change in the next 5 years. Because if I was a developer and I had a choice between buying 5 acres in Jericho and putting up 50 units, or buying 5 acres in Williston, I'm going to go with Williston. It's got everything there that I need. Why would I spend the money out here? And that's just the economics of it. Our best hope remains at the Riverside, where we have brownfield, and all we need is get the sewer in there and get everything else going. And you could put it in. It's already zoned. It's already zoned for high density.
Right, it changes zoning so they can actually build it.
Well, it's changing the character-based zoning of it. But that's
1 year's worth of houses.
Not if that goes up. That's,
Did we say 30?
no, that's the development that's going in on the Underhill side, which is going to be funded in part by.
The Butler's thing was 30, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's one.
That's one unit. There's space in there for like 20 of those. And if you look at the old plan, and particularly the build-out plan, which is, you can find it online, it's got quite a number of buildings in there. 2 to 3-story buildings, mostly townhome kind of developments. Easily 500, 600 people in there. That's what the ultimate build-out called for.
500 people would be 250 units.
Plus or minus.
That'll be great.
But there is enough space between here and there for that gentle infill to happen. You drive by place just here with the 4 condos in the back. You don't look for it, you don't see it.
I look all over for this stuff and even on land.
So I have a question on, in the town plan, they had something about 5-story buildings. And then there was a discussion about how we'd have to spend $800,000 for a fire truck for that. Yeah. So has that been changed in the plan? I mean, I think everything's about 3 stories, right? I think that's what Richmond is also, is 3 stories. Otherwise you need to spend a lot of money to accommodate it.
You need the elevator, handicapped accessibility, and you need a fire truck to be able to get up that tall.
So what are you worried
so
about?
I'm just hoping that the thing where it said 5 stories in the village centers has been changed to 3 stories. Otherwise, we won't have any money to put in the resources for septic and water in the village.
The builder would do that.
There goes your low cost.
No, I understand the point. I'm trying to figure out where in your.
I think it was in the volume. I think
volume 1.
Volume 1. It was the last one that we were reviewing.
Okay.
In the last meeting.
Anything else that anyone wants to call out from the housing stock section for conversation? Noting that it's almost 8:30.
Well, any comments that I wanted to make, I wrote down. And I don't think it makes sense to reiterate them at this point. I don't think there was that much else, but
no, I think they're all pretty consistent with things we've been talking about.
Yeah, I wanted to like make one of the tables more clear. That was just kind of like, these were all just little edits, you know.
Yeah, no, I got
Typos. Replace affordable with lower income, because, you know, I still think that we should use the term affordable for anything that's median and below, not just use it for lower income. And then, yeah, that was the only other comment I had, really. And then we get to the last thing about the missing middle, and that's it.
Okay.
Do you think it's bearing with the lines?
Yeah,
I didn't
expand on
that.
expand on that. So
It can be really expensive.
and so this is like all electric lines around here need to be buried.
No, but it's the point and the electric lines should be buried. And I like buried electric lines are nice, and but to require, say for example, on infill, burying the electric line to my mother's house. I mean, there was many obstacles with the town to building that house, but one of them was buried electric line. And in the case we were doing infill, when the wires are across the street and they're up in the air, I had to bury the line from across the street.
How did you get it down?
So we tried drilling under the road with a directional drill and failed because we had bedrock. We had to dig up the whole street, shut down Jericho Center, run the conduit, pave it back over again. It cost me $25,000. That one little, the DRB just rolls off their list, you know. And in Jericho Center, I don't know, you know, all of your lives I've been enriched by that fact that I buried that electric line. Then,
I remember saying, "Who is the idiot?" It was you.
Chuck, you'll be so happy.
Then a couple of years later, we get 2 EVs, and I want to run. I don't have enough power to charge them from my barn. I call up GMP. They run a line from across the street over to my barn. It cost me $1,500. So you give the DRB the power to make something more expensive on infill, they'll do it. Infill is already expensive. I believe it's more expensive than many, you know, congregated because
where I live, our electric has been buried, and that was since 1987.
Ours is too, but it was buried by the developer as a greenfield development. So it's really easy to lay down the roads, lay down the conduit, lay down the cable. Because new development, it's a piece of cake. And you're going to be really happy when the windstorm comes and the wires get knocked down on your neighbor and you've still got power.
I want that power.
It'll be the other direction. It'll stop just after your pole.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I could see if I had wires above ground in my house, my 2 maple trees would have that are this big around would have to be taken down, I'm sure, because they run right by it.
It's just going to, you know.
For new development, it makes sense because the cost is cheaper. They bury the cable anyway.
Within a development. I mean, your street looks lovely with no overhead. I mean, I just assume all the lines are buried. Let's start with Skunk Hollow. Let them bury, you know, if those guys bury them, then let them come back and make an argument.
So are they talking about going back and burying all these wires? Or are they just saying if it's new infill, you have to bury them?
But I'll tell you, if I ever win the lottery, you'll notice all those electric lines are gone. That's my guarantee to the town. That's what I'm going to do.
I'm a fan of burying electrical lines. I grew up in a country that scoffs at non-buried electrical lines and never has power outages. But anyway, what the town plan here says is it says over time existing lines should be buried and new lines should be placed underground unless there are clear environmental constraints in doing so. But it doesn't really tell you who has to bury the existing lines, and I don't think it's like a mandate to bury existing lines for the homeowners that are already there. I can't deduce a mandate from that.
I'm talking adding an infill house and requiring it, which is what they do. Well, first of all, I never should have needed a PUD to build that house.
But requiring that lines be buried for new developments adds an additional cost that may get in the way of
I see. I think that may be a non-town plan mandate because it says although utilities are buried in new developments. So it's almost like it states it as a matter of fact, so that there's already some kind of existing rule that may be kind of a state rule. I don't know.
It's cheaper on a development.
Yeah. I think it is a zoning reg that dates back to at least the 80s. That new developments, new subdivision developments must bury their wires. And as far as I know, in anything on planning commission, no one has come up and said, gosh, if I didn't have to bury my wires, I'd be building more units. Okay. I don't know what it costs. I have no idea, but it doesn't seem to be a huge barrier to entry.
That is for infill.
but for infill.
For infill, that's different. So the appropriate thing to say when we look at adjusting this is that to wherever possible, infill does not require burying a wire.
Well, see, it doesn't require. If it's infill.
It doesn't require it, but it's preferred that if you can, you do.
Or if it's in a neighborhood that has overhead lines.
I think that we only have to speak to it if there really is a requirement. I mean, I mean, you said there was a requirement, Chuck, and you had the experience that there was a requirement. Was that our zoning regs that required that?
Well, it started out to build an infill house in Jericho Center. I had to form a PUD and lay out a whole development in my backyard in order to build an infill house. They put on all kinds of requirements.
Yeah, but was that a town requirement or I just don't want to fight windmills. If this is a state requirement,
no, it was a town decision. Because I mean, obviously, I had to to my barn. I didn't have to bury it. It was because I had to form a PUD to build a single house, and it was because the DRB had the right to require it because I wanted to build my house and I would agree to anything. And I had no idea it would cost me $25,000.
But at the same time, since we've now made it possible in the town of Jericho to put in an accessory dwelling unit without special permits, you would no longer treat it as a PUD, which would no, right. But if you don't have one now, we're talking about infill. I've got my 3/4 of an acre and I decide I want to put a 300 square foot in-law house so I can retire near my backyard. That's not a PUD. And that would not go through the DRB in that same sense. And they would not be able to force me to bury the wire. It's because you created a PUD that happened. Had you not created a PUD, which you would not have had to do if you did that 15 years later, like last year, you would not have had to do that. And then you would be able to string it across the top. Because you weren't doing a PUD.
I don't know, because it's a second unit. I already had a PUD. I already had an ADU. It's an addition.
Well,
and that's why the infill argument isn't trivial here. Like if we're talking about infill and trying to put additional units on a lot, and that triggers this requirement, then that is an additional cost burden.
That would be like the old toy store here that's apparently has plenty of space in the back for several units.
Yeah. Yeah. So I wonder if
it's not a PUD question, it's the fact that it went to the DRB. If anything requires a conditional use, goes to the DRB and I can slap this on.
Yeah.
I wonder if just amending the sentence that you read, Frederica, to there were some kind of like environmental or ecological concerns, if we could add to that.
Well, the line that we could modify is the last line on page 6 of that section, and it says, over time, existing lines should be buried and new lines should be placed underground unless there are clear environmental constraints to doing so. So that's the should, what we should do. So we could modify that somehow to add some kind of to relativize it for infill, maybe.
inhibits infill, affordable infill, or I don't know, something.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
Okay.
Or any, I mean, make a distinction between a development and everything else.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because yeah, that paragraph just really is we're talking about the utilities that are running along fields and woods, like all along parts of Packards are safe. There are utility poles that run far away from anybody.
That's the safety issue, and that's the reliability issue.
Yeah, and that's a big one. You know, we get a drought one year, and one of those wires sparks, everything goes up. It's a lot of,
or a tree branch takes them down, or
I'd like to move us on. We don't have a whole lot of time. It's 8:39, so we've got 20 minutes to get through the rest of the agenda. So anyone who's done some work on procedures for reviewing and responding to DRB applicants, want to share what you've learned, what you've heard? I think Chuck and Frederica, maybe were you having, or maybe Chuck, conversations with Chris?
So I haven't had any. I've tried to dig into the HOA issue is what I've done. That was kind of one of the assignments that I gave myself, is to just look into HOAs, and I found some, to see what the state laws are about HOAs, and I kind of hit a dead end, and I found some stuff that seemed pertinent, but it didn't. For example, my simple question was, can you have an HOA that prohibits PUDs when PUDs are allowed by state law explicitly? AUDs, sorry, AUDs. So AUDs are explicitly allowed by state law, and Act 47 makes that pretty clear as well. And can you have an HOA that kind of tries to override that? And I couldn't find a good answer for that. So I think that's just a simple question that a lawyer could answer. And my hunch is there's this thing about HOAs that's called not enforceable. So if they write things that are too strict or that violate state laws, then it's thought that you can write whatever you want, but it's not going to be enforceable. And that might be the case for, these kinds of things. But I think we already talked about kind of our approach to that being that we would encourage more explicit statements as to what can and cannot be in our HOA bylaws or agreements. So that's all the thing I did about my piece.
Did you find any templates of boilerplate language that might be a little bit more permissive and less exclusive?
No, I did not, but one of the things that was homework that I didn't do yet is I was going to talk to the head, the CEO or whatever it's called, the head of the affordable housing, is it VHA? No, what is it called? You know what I mean?
Housing finance scheme?
Yeah,
VH.
yeah.
Finance
yes,
agency?
VHFA or whatever it's called. Yes. So I know her and Maura Collins, and I was going to ask her about this. So she might have some more answers. So that's something that's still on my list of things to do.
Okay, cool.
VHFA, sorry.
That's okay.
so the thing is that all these big, beautiful farmhouses everyone looks at, they always started as a little house. You look at what's the entranceway with the one little chimney in it. That was the original house. And it had done. So if you buy a piece of land, I mean, that's what my brother did. He started out living in a house trailer and built a little house and then added on to it.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's kind of the standard way of
looking at the old ads, real estate ads for Jericho in the 60s and 70s. And it was very common in the developments around the Jericho village to have the unfinished second floor. And that it would, Ward and June Cleaver would buy the first floor, and before they had a child, they would finish a bedroom on the second floor and maybe finish the bathroom, but they'd buy a house and they could choose whether to have a garage or not, whether the driveway would be paved. And you could really get, you could get started in a house and then finish it.
That's what we did. Mine's a cape, the upstairs was a barn, and we lived in the downstairs, and I told my wife it'd take me 4 months to do the upstairs, and 4 years later we finally moved up. But
you had the floor right.
Yeah, I got the number right. But I think that's why if someone builds a cape for a lower cost house, you can do exactly that. Leave that unfinished, and then, like, I met a guy the other weekend who built a barn, and he actually sawed the trees, cut them up, and built the whole thing himself in his spare time. He's an IT guy. So, I mean, that's, people can do it.
But what a lot of people have done is you buy a house with an unfinished basement that has daylight windows, and you finish it up and you get a fair amount of room in there. So that's part of, that still goes on to this day.
Right. I don't see that in the ads, though. The houses all seem kind of finished. But
the basements look kind of empty.
Now, one of the things, like, it's hard to do kind of line by line, but it's hard for people, of a certain age who have a home, are comfortable, have an idea about how they want to live and what is personally acceptable to them. And the plan in many places risks sort of projecting those aspirations of the comfortable and trying to make them uniform. And, there hasn't been a lot of innovation in housing. We're in construction over the last 40, 50, 60 years. I feel like there's some young people out there who are really ready to really do some interesting and innovative things. And we just got to make sure that we have a plan and zoning that permits this innovation. I mean, God knows we've made mistakes. We shouldn't be afraid of making mistakes. We're living with a lot of mistakes right now. But I think housing is going to start coming in all kinds of sizes and shapes and living configurations. My son is in his head, who's a builder, is designing like a living center that has, living room and kitchen and all that, and then bedrooms and little separate structures around, kind of around the outside. I mean, it's just that's where his head is in terms of imagination. And it's not something I'd want to live in. And I think a lot of us who are writing the plan or sharing amongst committees, we have a certain, we want to live in a house that's 1,000 square feet or 1,500 square feet. And we have a vision for what's acceptable, and or even the family size and structure. And we just got to make room. We just got to make room for people to innovate. I think we're going to see some houses. And we're already seeing them in places not here that are just astounding to look at. They're just extremely different from anything that's in Jericho now. And, we just need to be open to allowing that to happen.
We need to be open to allow it to happen, but we should also be realistic that it may not happen the way we want it to.
Absolutely. We got a whole lot of that already.
We seem to have what a lot of people want, because a lot of people want to move into one of our houses.
I'm going to move us on to
So some of other towns have done the same thing.
the next item. So this Thursday we are tabling at the farmers market. Setup is, is it 2:30? And takedown is at 6:30. I will be there the whole time. If you are able to go, please let me know.
In Jericho, about 8 days, almost 2 months.
Thursday's not one.
What can you repeat the setup
Yeah, so setup time is at 2:30.
Okay.
And then takedown is at 6:30. So any time within those hours, I would welcome company to do some tabling. And the tabling will probably consist of sharing the ADU flyers and the ADU website information. It'll include, if I can get my act together, some suggestions about how to be a YIMBY that folks can do. But really it'll just be engaging community members on the topic. And then we will also be tabling with the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee, on which I also sit, and we are hoping to do some recruitment, gather some ideas about events and work plans, since we're a relatively new committee, and maybe do some fun kind of diversity coloring pages and button making for families.
What are you hearing when you do it?
Haven't had a lot of success at engaging people. A lot of people just walking by making a joke about like, will you buy me a house, or will you buy my kid a house, or that kind of thing, which is fine. Some people engaging in conversation. It was really nice the last time affordable housing tabled. We tabled with the Jericho Underhill Land Trust, and that was actually really great. A lot of people came to talk about the land trust and then saw that we were there, and it sparked some nice conversations about the balance between conservation and housing development, and the concerns that both sides have about the other, and needing to work together. And I think that is really the heart of the conversation in Jericho, at least for the people who currently live here. So it was really nice to table with Libby and the Land Trust.
Sure.
Not for other people to sit. I brought the poster boards and had a lot of the same poster stuff that we had at town meeting.
I have better luck tabling if I put a couple chairs out.
That's a good idea.
And ask, hey, you want to sit down?
Yeah.
So I saw some couple people this last weekend, and they're older, like 60-ish, and they've got young kids, but they're in their 30s, and they were both, they're saying, of their grown children and their friends, their interest in Jericho is for housing for the median income, the 90 to 100K.
Yep.
And they did say that we're aware of apartments, but we would request that more focus is put on smaller houses versus apartments, just for what it's worth.
Smaller detached houses, or
duplexes, condos. They thought that was interesting too. Yeah, they're basically just saying, something. So someone making the example was 90K a year can get something that they can own and build equity for.
Yeah,
whatever. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
I mean, the traditional trajectory is you get a condo, stay in it for 2 to 5 years, build up equity, buy a small house, stay in that for another 2 to 5 years, build up more equity, buy a bigger house, stay in there for 25 or 30 years, go back to the small house or the condo.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the way the American real estate market is set up. You're supposed to take that projection.
And that, by the way, is why we have to be careful when we talk about perpetually affordable housing, and because that sometimes does not allow that kind of equity building, and it might be more appropriate to think about perpetually affordable rental housing, which also exists, because rental, by definition, you're not trying to build equity. So rent controlled might be better than perpetually affordable housing that you can't sell for more than you bought it for, essentially.
I gonna move us on.
Yep.
To any liaison updates. I don't know that I have anything.
Planning Commission would appreciate all of your input, both as the committee and individually. If you want to provide it, you can do that separate from the Housing Committee. And I think that would be beneficial for us to magnify the message of the Affordable Housing Committee, to have everybody speak with one voice, but also speak with many. I don't need to tell Chuck that he's already doing it.
That's not you.
And that
send it to Susan.
The
Send Susan.
Yeah.
I think that feedback, while you can continue to give feedback for a bit now, I think committee feedback I need to get in by the end of the week. I think.
Yeah, next week we will be going over
and then
that feedbacks. Yeah.
Next week, the 19th is the first public forum. Is that right?
Yes.
So Tuesday evening at 7 o'clock, the Planning Commission's first public forum on the thing in its entirety.
September 19th?
Yeah, that's next Tuesday.
And again, it's a public meeting. If you want to come, please do.
Any liaison before I keep moving? Okay, so then
Conservation Commission didn't have a meeting this month.
okay. Other business, I just wanted to let folks know I went to the Harvest Crossing kickoff. And it was really kind of inspiring. Like I got a little sappy. It was a really inspiring event. So just as a reminder, this is the Underhill group that is partnering with Green Mountain Habitat to, I think they're building 7 structures, 9 units. And they just completed the purchase of the land. And are ready to kick off their phase 2.
How much acres?
I can't remember.
It was like 20 acres. It's the area where they used to have the harvest market.
And they're keeping a bunch of it common. It's
behind the church in Underhill.
Common land. Let's see, what did I write?
They did a good presentation when they came out a couple months ago around that.
Yeah, definitely check out.
Yeah, I think that's on it's on our website somewhere.
Yeah. But anyway, so they're starting the second phase of the project, which means that they finished kind of the planning, and now they're moving into implementation. But it was really inspiring. It was really exciting. There were some big wigs there, and lots of talk about how this kind of thing is important, and the work that we all are doing.
So what are the size of the units? Are they?
I'm not gonna.
Okay.
56.
They were bigger than we might have.
They're, I mean, what did the Habitat guy say? That they're
like 1,500 to 2,000, 1,500 to 1,800.
Yeah, that's their general.
And then there's like a duplex or something that might be.
I think they've got 5 single and 2 duplexes, something like that on the lot. Community septic. Anyway. October agenda, we will be, I'm sure we'll hit a little bit on town plan, but I'm hoping to move away from that and solidify this DRB and HOA stuff. But I'll send out an email about what the agenda is and maybe asking a couple of people for some action items.
Do we want to get ahead of the Wonders Code revision?
Thank you for saying that. Form-based code. I can't remember what the planning, do you have the planning commission notes in front of you, Eric? There's a plan for, I wrote it down, I can find it. For the planning commission to do a kind of introduction education session on the form-based code, as they prepare themselves to get familiar with it so that they can start looking at it. And I can't remember which meeting that was going to be.
It's going to be after the revisions to the town plan.
October 3rd was the possible.
Yeah, that was the earliest possible date.
Yeah. So once they solidify that, I'll make sure that we all know about it. If nothing else, it'll be a good conversation to listen to. But that should definitely be next on the work plan for us to be focusing on.
My notes on the harvestcrossing.org would be mostly single family as something that the neighbors would accept from that one. That was they came into the 28th of 2022.
Yeah, there's definitely one or two duplexes, but I can't remember.
I think it was and it's also perpetually affordable, meaning if you had equity at the time, you would get the equity out, but then they would drop the price down. So you could sell it back to them at market rate, get the equity, and that way you can still stay on the increase your equity in the house chain.
Yeah.
That's how it works. That's interesting.
Yeah, they get a percentage of the equity back, and as it appreciates in value, the homeowners see that reflected as well.
Also, any improvements they make add to it. So if you add another unit, a backyard onto it, or another ADU or whatever, you get the benefit of that if you pay for it 100%.
Yeah, it's a nice model that does allow for some equity building. But your point is a good one, and a good one for us to be, Frederica, and a good one for us to be aware of, especially as we talk about perpetually affordable housing with Champlain Housing Trust, because many people are under the impression that you can't build equity, and the model that Champlain Housing Trust uses does allow you to at a percentage rate, but it is a different system. Anyway, it's 9 o'clock. I'd love a motion to adjourn.
Motion.
Stacey got to you. Can you second it?
Second it.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Hey, Dave, you want to jump in? We've adjourned, but sorry, I didn't see.
Well, we're all still here, so we're still in session. Quickly.
Go ahead.
The subject that I think Frederica brought up, the missing middle having a different definition from an economic description. I sent something out to each one of you. It discusses that where that term came from, and the architectural types. That's where it started, and then the missing middle phrase got appropriated for other purposes. Anyway,
fascinating. Thank you.
A key point in that Harvest Crossing thing, Habitat for Humanity's director, David Mullen, has been meeting with them every week on a Tuesday for more than 2 years. Every week they were communicating with Habitat for Humanity. And just kind of a side note, I did tour a Habitat for Humanity home that in a development in Milton that has $500,000, $600,000 homes. It's all new. And the developer invited Habitat in, and they have put in 2 homes. One concession that Habitat made is they don't usually provide garages, but that wasn't going to fit. Back to your discussion of what the typical housing looked like. So they put garages in those 2. So that's all.
Do you know what developer it was?
I'm not going to remember who it was.
It's okay. It'd be easy to find out. Just curious.
If you go up 128 and turn left at the bus garage onto Milton Westward Road, and come down into Milton, down off the hill. It's on the left, just before you get into Milton. Great big development.
All right, everybody. Thank you so much. Have a good evening, Frederica. Have a good night, Dave.